All right, let's take a look at the last of the hormones for this unit, and we're going to be taking a look at ones that are not originated out of the brain. They're other portions of the body themselves. And so these are going to be the thymocytes, the ones responsible for regulating blood sugars, and then the adrenaline response. So we'll be taking a look at those with epinephrine, norepinephrine. Okay, so let's take, first of all, a look at basic immunity. This is actually a hormone response by the thymus gland. So if you remember when we were dissecting the cat, right above the heart itself, there was this bunch of tissue we had to remove. We just pinched it with our fingers and we pulled it away so that we could see the underlying superior vena cava and common carotid arteries. So that gives you a frame of reference for where we are. Just above the heart is a gland called the thymus gland. And so what that thymus gland does is it actually, this is just a chart with all the different white blood cells, it actually tells those white blood cells to differentiate into the special ones. Now, we talked about them in terms of like the basophil, the neutrophil, the eosinophils, and the monocytes, and so on. So we were just taking a look at the specific types of white blood cells, but there's actually a hormone signal that tells those specific white blood cells that we studied way back when. It tells them what to become and when. So that hormone, it's a group of hormones called thymocytes, and it's basically stimulating the general immunity for the body. Now, we have a hypersecretion of that. So what could happen from all of that sounds like a good thing, a really healthy, robust immune response. But if we have too many of these white blood cells out there, these leukocytes would actually go and start to find other parts of the body to attack. So this leads into some of the other disorders we've talked about in the past, where like histiocytosis, where the white blood cells are actually attacking cells or tissues of the body and so on. Now, certainly along that line, a hyposecretion from the thymus is going to be when you don't have the thymocytes being produced, and so you have a really slow, sluggish, non-responsive immune system. So hyper and hyposecretions. I should also mention that this is the gland. When you think about those over-the-counter types of things, you go into the grocery store and you find those things that are responsible for boosting the immune system. And so they're going to be like coldies, they're going to be like airborne, they're going to be vitamin C enriched, and so on. To be very, very, very clear on that what those products do for vitamin C, for zinc, for magnesium, for all of those things, they're linked kind of tangentially to the functioning of the thymus. And what I mean by that is they are micronutrients that help the thymus work a little bit better in differentiating the white blood cells and so on. But certainly vitamin C does not keep you from getting the cold. We're in the age of coronavirus right now. And so there are some people that say, oh, just get lots of vitamin C. That doesn't prevent you from contracting a virus, okay? That doesn't even actually make your white blood cells better in anything. It maybe optimizes a little bit of your thymus gland. It doesn't prevent the cold. It doesn't get you healthier or anything like that. That is actually misconstruing information. I won't call it an outright lie. Those are micronutrients that the thymus could use to work a little bit better with the thymocytes. But we want to be very careful in this because people treat those products almost like vitamins. And if you have too much of that, it's supposed to be a micronutrients. If you have too much of it, it actually would work against you and actually kill off your thymus in the meantime. So be careful of those products. Yes, it could boost your immunity in small amounts, just every once in a while. Yes, it could make the thymocytes a little bit more effective or the thymus gland a little bit more active. But if you do this long term, it would actually kill it. So you want to be very, very careful with that. And certainly it doesn't even make sense. How could vitamin C keep you from contracting a virus? Though that's just a lazy way of describing things. So be very careful in some of the things that you hear and what they're actually meaning out of that. Now, to get off of my little soapbox from that topic, let's move on to sugar regulation. And for that, we actually see two organs. We see the pancreas and the liver itself. There's two organs that are involved with that because there are two things involved with regulating blood sugars. One is the one we always think of, which is insulin. Its job is to actually lower blood sugar. And by doing that, it means that it's talking to individual cells of the body, tells the cells to open their gates and let sugars in. Now, remember, the sugars are the glucose is what's responsible for going into the mitochondria to make energy, okay, biological energy, the ATP energy that we need. Insulin tells the cells to allow the glucose in. Not enough insulin, then those cells stay locked up and the glucose is not allowed in. Your cells starve to death. Too much of it means the floodgates are wide open, all the sugar goes in at once, and all of a sudden you have no reserves left over in the blood. Okay, on the other side of that coin, we have the ability to raise our blood sugars from storage. Okay, so your liver is specifically a storage site for glucose, and so the hormone talking from the pancreas to the liver specifically, the hormone telling the liver to let that sugar go into the bloodstream is called glucagon. It tells the liver to get the glucose gone out into the bloodstream. That's how I always think about that one. So when we think about disorders, and usually when we're talking about too high or too low blood sugars, we never really talk about glucagon. It's almost always dealing with the insulin. Okay, so let's just focus on that. If we have insulin hyposecretion, remember what insulin does? Insulin tells the cells to open up and let sugars in. Okay, so if we don't have enough of that message, what happens? We have sugar in our urine, the cells stay locked, they don't let the sugar in, and your cells starve to death. That is diabetes mellitus. That is the injection-based type of diabetes that we see here. In fact, what's in this for insulin is actually ground up from cow pancreas. We use that type of thing. The reason we find the hyposecretion of insulin is usually because this is the one that's genetic. It's not behavioral. This is the one that's genetic, and we have one slight deletion of one particular letter in your genome that's responsible for insulin. And so if you're missing that adenine, that one letter, it throws it all off and your insulin doesn't work. Now, this is the genetic one. You can certainly imitate that through your diet-controlled diabetes, and basically it's conditioning that pancreas to basically release less and less insulin because you're way overdoing it in sugar content. And so behaviorally, every time you eat, your pancreas just says, you got so much sugar in there, we don't need to make this insulin. So you're training your pancreas to hypoproduce your insulin in the same, so you end up with the same result. Now, you could have too much insulin as well. This can happen if you overdose in insulin, but your pancreas could actually make too much in the same respect, and so you get insulin shock. That means that the floodgates are wide open, the cells are flashing through all that energy, but there's nothing in reserve. So that's a hypersecretion of insulin itself. Okay. Now, the last one we have to talk about in this chapter is adrenaline. Now, there's actually two hormones responsible that are in adrenaline. It's called epinephrine and norepinephrine. In general, think about what your adrenaline does for you. It stimulates all your body activity. It raises your heart rate. It raises your body temperature. It raises even your mental acuity. It raises your water excretion. Okay, all those things that happen, those are stimulating types of effects. Even when you see the little, I don't know, it's kind of one of those things when you have an allergic reaction to something, they'll have an EpiPen. Epi refers to epinephrine and norepinephrine, okay? So that's basically, it's an adrenaline shot is what it does. So it's caused by basically something from your environment, something that's causing you to need to have a fight or flee type of reaction. Okay, so that's there. Now, if you have not enough of that, it means you're not going to be able to respond as much. The body can't be stimulated in such a way. Now, you can have actually a hypersecretion of this. And so there's some things apart from the normal body effects. Think about your heart rate, your vasodilation and constrictions, and so on, your brain activities. But think about what this could mean in other terms. Now, remember, this is out of your adrenal medulla, the middle part, not the adrenal cortex. And that's going to be the specific types of like cortisol and aldosterone and sex hormones. The adrenal sex hormones is in the cortex. This is in the core, the middle part. But we could have a disorder from that core part called pheochromocytoma. These are hypersecretions. Usually it's because of a tumor of something, but it's basically hyperproducing in there. And so you could get some disorders called pheochromocytoma as well. And so just kind of some hyperactive of those things. It could even bridge into hyperactive of the adrenal cortex as well. But this is the adrenal medulla. And so you have a hypersecretion of that, of those epinephrine and norepinephrine, usually due to a tumor. Okay, so hypersecretion, hyposecretion, there is a disorder named after that. Now, that concludes all of the hormones that you're responsible for in this entire unit. So again, I want to refocus you. You need to know what those hormones specifically call for, who they talk to, and also what disorders are associated. Okay, there are some fancy names. For example, pheochromocytoma. You got to know that is a hypersecretion of epinephrine, norepinephrine from the adrenal medulla. Okay, I've given you a lot of different visuals throughout this PowerPoint, so you could get some of those visuals in your mind of what they are. Think about what symptoms a person would have with that, and then again, I can't emphasize this is something that students miss all the time. You can't just say it's a hypersecretion. You have to say it's a hypersecretion of specific hormones. Okay, you got to name both. So be careful with that. Be deliberate in how you practice it, and that's why you have your other study sheets. Okay, good luck, and that concludes the hormones unit.